and welcome to AEW Unrestricted. We're the official podcast of All Elite Wrestling, and we are sponsored by Upper Deck. You can collect your favorite wrestlers in the 2025 Upper Deck AEW and start your trading card collection today. You can unwrap autograph, memorabilia, premium tech inserts. Visit upperdeck.com to learn more. Don't forget to claim your free 2025 AEW All In digital promo card set from Upper Deck today. The set is only available until July 28th at 12 p.m. Pacific. We put the link in the show notes. Check it out. And I mean, speaking of All In, we just got back from Texas, and what an incredible show. Like we say every single time, this is the best pay-per-view yet, but like, okay, this one was all kinds of memorable. Tears multiple times, happy, sad, an emotional roller coaster, and just like each match got better and better and better throughout the show.
Look, I honestly, the only thing I was like sad about in that show was that I didn't get to see you all day. Like
I
genuinely,
didn't either. What the hell?
It was such a big building, and like everybody's around on golf carts, and like I saw you literally across the stadium, and I'm like, oh, there's no way I could make it to her. But I will say, you know, we were pulling cards from people who had moments on the show. And, you know, talking Upper Deck, one of the cards I did pull was Aubrey Edwards. Because that sprint in the AEW Unified Championship match was incredible. You can just, like, Aubrey Edwards has that cardio down. All right, because
it was funny because like Jerry Lynn came up to me earlier in the day. He's like, "Hey, I don't know who's reffing this match yet, but like we're gonna have a ref need to run in." So yeah, and I mentioned to Paul like, "Hey, we're gonna need a ref to run in," and later I was like, "Hey, so you're gonna run in, right?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, my cardio is pretty good." So I literally was terrified that like I'd pull a hammy like on the way down because that ramp was very long and very steep, and then instead I actually ended up hurting my arm on the slide in because I was just like,
no.
I gotta go. Like I'm fine. Like I'm still reffing and whatnot, but it was one of those like, oh, I'm a little sore today. You think the legs would be sore, but instead like the arm is sore. So that's a crazy one.
What a sprint. It's so good. So
thank
good.
you so much. I can't talk about All In without talking about the happiest ending I've ever seen in wrestling, but Hangman Adam Page getting the chance to open the briefcase and reveal the AEW World Championship title for the first time in such a long, long time, including that Bryan Danielson making a reappearance in a Blue Panther mask to take out Wheeler Yuta. Like there were so many moments in this match, and it just culminated like an incredible show.
I do want to talk about one other person, though. You're talking about the briefcase, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I had to pull the card from Marina Shafir, all right? Because she is probably the unsung hero of that match, and what she was able to do for the night. You know, I was talking to her after the show, and my God, Marina Shafir deserves so much credit, so many props. You know,
she carried that briefcase for months.
She carried the briefcase for months.
She brought it to Australia.
Yeah, and honestly, like there were so many moments with her in that main event, but you know, when Nana handcuffed her and the crowd goes nuts, and just again helping make that moment happen the way it did, I think Marina deserves so much credit.
We could talk an entire podcast about All In and all the incredible moments we had, but we're going to have, I have a feeling, an incredible conversation today with an incredible coworker of ours. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited too, Will. Who's our guest today?
I'm really excited for our guest here today.
Yes.
He is a coach in AEW, but more than that, he has had quite a memorable career in itself, and one that I'm really excited to talk about. Some wrestling fans may know him as Glacier. We know him as AEW coach Ray Lloyd, but no matter what, he is here on AEW Unrestricted. Ray, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me. When I got the invitation, I immediately responded back. Absolutely. Please, let me come on and talk a little bit. Thank you guys.
Well, we're actually just fresh off of All In Texas, and
yes.
You know, a lot has gone on in a lot happened at that show, and one of the crazier things to happen was seeing Dustin become TNT champion. And I know that you're really close with the Rhodes family. How did you feel about that moment going down the way it did?
It was honestly, I had two personal favorite moments and for the pay-per-view. That was one of them because Dustin actually talked to me earlier that day, and he was very excited. His family was there, his nephews and Kristen, his sister, and so yeah, I mean, he was really excited, and obviously it was a very emotional moment for him when he won. So I was just over the moon, happy and proud for him and for his family legacy and everything. It was a really special moment. I mean, it really was. And a moment that to me really transcended the wrestling business. It was, a moment that just celebrated, here's a guy who's had an unbelievable career. And at this point in his career, he gets another just huge accolade, to put on his resume. And I thought it was awesome. It was really awesome.
I hadn't realized that he had not won a singles championship at like a major promotion since 1999.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely insane to think about. That like I'm frequently reminded that wrestling goes so far back because a lot of my wrestling context is really just AEW and like indies prior to that. So to have legends such as yourself on and to work with legends such as like Dustin and having worked with Sting and like all these guys, is just like, it's absolutely incredible to see like the history that we're still making, even with these guys that have been here for such and such a long time.
Absolutely.
As Will mentioned, you've got a long history with the Rhodes family, but I think we should talk a little bit about how you ended up at AEW in the first place. So how did it all happen?
Yeah. Well, it's just, I'm one of the guys because I've been a teacher and a coach for a long time, not just in wrestling. Both my degrees were in education, and I taught public school for a long time. Coached, several different sports. So I had some great mentors in my life. And one of the things that I learned way back when was, I learned a lot of lessons through really learning great quotes. And my all-time favorite quote is what I got from my college athletic trainer was, it's not always just about what you know or who you know, it's who's willing to say they know you and who's willing to put their name and reputation on the line and out there for you. And QT, Marcel, and I go way back. We've been friends forever and been good friends for a long, long time. And also his wife, Carolyn. And back in 2016, QT had called me and he was looking to start a wrestling school in Atlanta. They were moving from Orlando to Atlanta. And long story short, we ended up opening up the One Fall Power Factory in Atlanta. And once again, we initially opened up in a small space. And because of a relationship I had in place with one of my best friends and mentors, a gentleman named Chip Smith, and Chip's known as the godfather of sports performance. He's trained probably more NFL athletes and world-class athletes than anyone I know. He had a world-class 30,000 square foot NFL style training facility. And because that relationship was already in place, we were able to move our school there. And you guys know, we actually ended up filming some of the TV show there when we were going through the pandemic. And so you guys got to see it firsthand. But the school went great for several years. And eventually Cody came on board. We rebranded it as Nightmare Factory. And then, of course, AEW got started in 19 and Cody was in the position he was in. QT came on board and has since, worked his way up to even a better position than when he started. And so, and I was actually a few years ago, I'd gone back to teaching high school right here in Orlando. I was teaching high school special ed. And it's something that's really meaningful to me. But my heart is wrestling. I grew up a huge wrestling fan. Me and my twin brother, we always dreamed of being the NWA World Tag Team Champs, which became a reality for me. And a big reason was because of my relationship with Dusty, which maybe we'll get a chance to talk about. If not, I'll tell you guys the story when we get together again. But so through all that, even though teaching was very rewarding for me. Of course, QT and I, we talk all the time. I'd go back and forth to help up with the camps and stuff as much as I could. And it just came to a point where the conversation started where I said, hey, look, if there's ever, an opening, for a coaching position, how how much I love coaching and teaching and mentoring. And so the conversation started, and then eventually I ended up talking to Sanjay Dutt, which Sanjay and I have been friends for about 20 years. We go back to our TNA days in the early 2000s. And so we started talking and put the wheels in motion. And actually AEW has been so great to me on so many levels. It was able to get worked out to where I was able to finish up the school year. then I came on board right afterward, like a week later, last June. And so it's been about a year for me. I have absolutely, I don't know if I can put into words how much I absolutely love going to work and doing this, because I love being around wrestling. I love being around the next generation, and anything that I can do to help in any way, I'm gladly willing to do. So it's a great environment. I've really enjoyed getting to know Tony on a personal level. And then in events like this, to be a part of this, years ago, I didn't know if I would be in wrestling especially at this level, back then. And just to wake up every day and get to go have a week like we all just had, it was just, I'm a very, very fortunate person, and I don't take it for granted at all. I really, really relish this time that I have and this opportunity. And I'm just trying to give as much as I can to the company and everybody, and just bring as much value as I can, and then enjoy the ride, along the way personally.
And I think that's one of the things I have grown to really appreciate about you, is that your joy and appreciation for the time you're having in wrestling is really infectious. You see it every single time I see you backstage. You've always got just this the sense of kindness that I feel like I'm really grateful to even get to experience with you. And so, one of the things that you had just talked about was some of the reconnections that you've made, because that's I was just having this conversation with JoJo at All In, and how much of a cornucopia AEW kind of is of wrestling history. And every time somebody walks in the building, I always watch them light up at some of the faces that they've worked around over the years. And when you came in last year, that was kind of no exception. Talk about some of the familiar faces that you've gotten to be around since you've been in AEW, and then some of the newer names you've got to know.
One of the people that I was able to reconnect with was Jerry Lynn. Jerry and I worked together in WCW and for a long time, and it's always, it's whenever I see Jerry, it's just it's like an old reunion, old high school reunion or something, or a class reunion. And so I love seeing him. Luther, who's with Tony Storm. Luther and I, we connected before AEW, actually, way before I came on board. He would come down to the Nightmare Factory and coach some, and we became friends. So just being able to reconnect with him on a weekly basis and get to hang out with him on the road has been amazing. And ironically, one of the persons who I've really developed a great friendship with now, we actually travel a lot together, is Scotty Hotty, Scotty Garland, and who's an amazing person, amazing coach, had an amazing career, and we're pretty close in age. I think I'm older than all of them, but I'm a little bit like an older brother instead of a dad, as far as the age difference. But just I've become great friends with Scotty, and it's funny, Scotty and I, we should have crossed paths way earlier in our careers, but we didn't for some reason. And so just getting to know him and like I said, Lenny and just all those guys that I get that are long-time relationships, and the new ones, it's just it's something that, like I said, but just that's the reason why I show up to work with a smile on my face, because I get to see some great people every week, and I've made some great new friends. Some of the young talent that I've gotten to know, it's just awesome, because I know I'm seeing history in the making as far as the next 10, 20 years of wrestling, and that's just really exciting to me. It's really, really exciting to me because I remember when I was the young talent coming up and getting to know the established stars that were working behind the scenes in WCW, and to be able to, as I always said, one of my greatest accomplishments is earning the respect of those people who I really admired so much, and to be able to be invited to have a seat at that table, so to speak, every time I came to work, was really, really cool. And so I'm hoping now that I'm on the other end of this, that I can offer that to some of the younger talent, and we can both, make some good magic out there, for the fans.
Hell yeah. Oh my God. I love when this conversation is just so crazily positive, and it's just yes, this is capturing the feeling that we all have backstage at AEW. We say, get the feeling, we're the best wrestle, but this is honestly that big old family vibe where we're all connecting, we're all making new friendships, and we're all making something incredible together. And yes. I feel like this is actually the best podcast to do right after getting back from Texas. So I'm really happy you're here. And there's a lot more to talk about. We got to take a quick break, but stay tuned to AEW Unrestricted. AEW Unrestricted. We are the official podcast of All Elite Wrestling, and we're talking to Glacier coach Raymond Lloyd, aka former WCW superstar. This is just an incredibly positive conversation. We're coming off the heels of All In Texas, an incredible week at AEW. And you had mentioned the first segment that you had some stories with Dusty, and I kind of wanted to touch on that before we move too far away. So what can you tell us?
Well, once again, I grew up in Brunswick, Georgia, about an hour north of Jacksonville, Florida, and that's where my dad was a wrestling fan, and he took me and my twin brother Ron to watch wrestling at the Jacksonville Coliseum, and so when I grew up, I had just amazing parents, and I tell you, the older I get, the more I realize I was really fortunate. My brother and I really were, but my two childhood heroes were Evel Knievel and Dusty Rhodes. And that's the God honest truth. And I looked at Dusty so much as a larger than life figure that I never ever expected to meet him, much less really get to know him on a personal level. And so when I came to WCW in '96, I still was so intimidated by the aura of Dusty Rhodes that it still took me quite a while. And I would say hello to him, but I never really got to really get to know him. And then probably about 2 years in, when I finally really started to get to know him. And then we became really, really close. When he left in 2000, he started Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling right there in Marietta, Georgia. And once again, I go back to that quote that Susan wanted to say, they know you. Dallas Page helped me an awful lot to get an opportunity to go into WCW because he facilitated a meeting with Eric Bischoff for me. And then when as Diamond Dallas Page has told me over the years is, him and Dusty were very close, as most people know. And when he opened up the company, he asked Dallas, he was like, hey, look, who do you think I can bring on board here? Who's still got their thumb on the pulse of the business, who might help me really kind of run things around here? Because he opened up an office, he had a wrestling school and everything, and Dallas recommended me, which was amazing. And I ended up talking to Dusty and then coming to work with him on the side. I was still with WCW, but I lived close to where everything was as far as the office and all that. So in my spare time, I helped Dusty there, and that's where our bond really developed into a very, very close friendship. And it was amazing. It was amazing that because I got to know him as a person, and everybody knows, the iconic image of him and his career. But I was really, really fortunate to get to know him as a person. And people ask me all the time, like, what was it like? What was Dusty Rhodes like? And I always tell them, I say, hey, he's like everybody. I mean, he can be an honorary old Texan sometimes, but I mean, 99% of the time, he's everything I expected him to be. So, when people say don't meet your heroes, I got a chance to meet mine, and he was everything I hoped he would be. But he became a great friend, and that's what I really remember. It's just he became a great friend. And it's funny. Quick story I'll tell you is I was just telling this to his two grandsons at the pay-per-view on Saturday. I showed them a picture of. Back then, I think it was 02. I was getting married, and Dusty was a groomsman at my wedding. And so, which is pretty cool right there. Yeah. And so I get a call on Thursday, the day before the rehearsal, and Dusty's he's at the tuxedo shop, and he calls me. He always called me Raymond. And he would, of course, it's just funny. As close as we were, he would still say it. He calls me up, I answer the phone, he says, Raymond. He says, American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Like you didn't know.
Like I didn't know. And and of course later I would realize he was saying it because the tuxedo guy was standing there listening, and he goes, hey, I'm at this tuxedo shop. He goes, this damn tuxedo don't fit. And he said, look, I got a really nice Hawaiian shirt. Is it okay if I just wear that? And I said, of course I'm stressed. I said, Dream. It's always called him Dream. I said, Dream, please tell me you're joking. He says, yeah, I'm joking. He says, tuxedo fits. I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh my God.
But that was Dusty, and it was awesome. It was awesome to be there for those TCW years. And then when he went to TNA after that, and he became the head of the booking committee, he brought me on board there, which was really, really cool. And through there, that's where I really got to know Keith Mitchell. Keith and I worked together in WCW, but I get to know him personally through Dusty during those years. And of course, you guys remember Keith. He's happily retired now. Him and his wife are driving around the country in his big old RV. So, but yeah, I have so many other great stories, but that's one that's always a nice little one to tell.
I love that. Honestly, I couldn't help but think about where that story was possibly going. I'm like, did he show up in a Hawaiian shirt or was he ripping it? But regardless, I'm happy that it all turned out perfectly.
It all worked out.
So I wanted to, the thing I was most excited to talk about. Look, people who watch this show constantly acknowledge the fact that there's this Mortal Kombat arcade behind me. You know where I'm about to go with this. So I was a big WCW fan in the day. I would almost say that it was my primary product. I always felt like that, that slogan, where the big boys play, really resonated with me because it made me feel like I was watching the more grown-up wrestling when I watched WCW. I said all that to say that when you take somebody who was a giant Mortal Kombat fan and you take somebody who's a big WCW fan, and then all of a sudden I start seeing these hype packages for what was this very clearly Sub-Zero inspired professional wrestler coming to WCW, there was nothing more that I could have possibly been more excited for than this. For a lot of fans, there was just a lot of hype around what Glacier was going to be, who Glacier was going to be, what Glacier was going to do. And then, of course, it ended up getting delayed over time. But, I want to talk about, first off, the inspiration behind the character. How was this presented to you? And, what exactly did you understand that it was going to be?
Well, I'll try to summarize it down to a brief story. When I first met with Eric, it was January of '96, and then and I got signed. Little did I know that was something that was kind of already in the works, because the Midway Company, which owned the rights to Mortal Kombat, had, as I know, I didn't know then, but they were in talks with TBS, TNT, because eventually they would put the Mortal Kombat TV show on TNT.
Conquest.
And so, so that's where, that was always my understanding of kind of how this really came to be, is they wanted to take that concept of Mortal Kombat and bring it into the wrestling ring. And so I think when I met with Eric, he had finally realized, okay, I think I found the first piece of that puzzle with me. And then eventually Chris Kanyon came on board, Brian Clark as Mortis and Wrath, James Mitchell came on board as James Vandenberg, and then my tag team partner, and still one of my best friends to this day, Ernest Miller. So that was kind of the group where we started. And ironically, the thing that most people probably wouldn't know is that they put Eric basically put Dallas in charge of it, and basically said, "Hey guys, you guys go figure this out." Like, we didn't have a creative team. We didn't have a writing team back then. It was just what they call the booking committee. And the booking committee was already pretty busy. So, so we had to basically, it was thrown in our laps, and we were basically assigned to kind of put all this together. And I recommended a gentleman who I had met, who's a special effects film artist named Andre Friedez. He had a studio called AFX Studios. Eric met with him, hired him, and so Andre was the one who was challenged with taking my persona and from drawing board to finished product, and really all four of the personas that we would present. Andre is the one that really brought them to life, and so it was a long process. It really was. I mean, when we started, I think, there was over 150 names that we started with, and eventually we got to where, we decided on Glacier. And the funny story I always say is that Eric Bischoff had, he had really, we whittled it down to maybe 10 names. And one of the ones on there was Cryonic. And Eric really was leaning towards that. And I remember Andre, the artist, I remember him saying, like, we all had kind of settled on Glacier, but we still had to, make the final call. And it was Eric who obviously would make the final call. And so we had this big, meeting and so we had already gotten together, and Andre was like, look, we got a campaign, and why don't we, he goes, you can't be Cryonic. He said, Cryonic is a bird. It's like, I was like, look, I didn't specialize in English, or what, I agree, whatever that means, but he said, look, why don't we go with, we pitched Glacier, and then we'll pitch your move being the Cryonic kick. And I said, okay, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe he'll go for that. And luckily he did. And that's how we settled on Glacier. And then we settled on the Cryonic kick as my signature move. So, but yeah, it was, and my big thing, honestly, Will, was I took it really, really serious. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, this was my big break. I'd been wrestling for 9 years up to this point. And I felt like finally the first few years of my career, I was terrified I'd make a fool out of myself every time I went out there in my first 3 or 4 years in the industry. But by this time, around year 6 or 7, I really felt like I was where I needed to be to really, if I had an opportunity to go to that top level, I felt like I could handle it. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagined that my big break would come with a blue mask and armor. Okay? So, but it's one of the things too. Nitro had started in the fall right before that in '95, and I always say to people, like, when you get offered a seat on a rocket ship like that, you don't take time to ask what seat, you just get on it. And that's what I did. And so the process was everything that was a very lengthy process. A lot of stuff got whittled away, and but my big thing was. My why became like one of my whys, and this was like, why am I doing this? Because the Mortal Kombat audience is a very, very dedicated audience, and I owed it to them, even though it wasn't something we directly referred to. I knew people were making that connection, and I owed it to that audience and to the professional wrestling audience to make this something that wasn't necessarily hokey or corny or anything like that. Because Eric's big thing is, your presentation will be what it is. But when the bell rings, I don't want this to be hokey. I want you guys to be, I don't want, to be something that's funny or silly. I want you guys to go hard in the ring. And so that was the thing. It was like, so to balance that with, this presentation of this persona as Glacier, but also in the ring, be very serious and present it in a way to where we felt like the Mortal Kombat fans would like it and respect it, as well as the pro wrestling fans. And I hope I did a good job of that.
You did a damn fine job of that.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
One of the things that I think a lot of fans acknowledge is the timing of it all, because the timing of the debut was obviously delayed, and I'll talk about that part in a second. But even the vignettes, right? It came about in a time where a lot of professional wrestling. At the time, when you look at like the WWF product, was very like occupational gimmicks, and then all of a sudden we've got this character of Glacier that just feels 10 times cooler than anything of the sort. But then around that same time, of course, in that summer of '96, we're introduced to the NWO, which then introduces this kind of sense of hyper-realism to professional wrestling that we hadn't quite had before that, where all of a sudden we're kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit, where we're using real names, we're going a little bit behind the scenes, and we're seeing pieces of wrestling we had never seen before. And the timing of that, with now all of a sudden this really cool but not so realistic character is suddenly in front of us, and it almost felt like a juxtaposition of wrestling presentation on the same show. Had you kind of felt that at the time as it was happening, or is that something you kind of noticed in hindsight?
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, Chris Cannon and I, we were actually scheduled to, they hadn't told us what we were going to do, but we were scheduled actually to be at Bash at the Beach 96, which is when the third man was revealed to be Hogan. So, and then we got called just a few days before, and they said, they didn't tell us why. They just said, hey, don't worry about coming down. And I think that was now years later, after I've heard Eric talk about it, Bischoff, that my understanding was they were like, okay, look, let's don't put that out. Let's put this off for a little bit, because I think they already knew how things were going to be, when Hogan came out as the third man, and that changed wrestling. It really did. So it was one of those things where early in '96 we started off, everything kind of had good legs, and then all of a sudden we had to kind of put it on hold for a while and then pick it back up later on that summer. So that was something that was totally never expected when we started, but they just had to shift and do the best we could. And the thing is that, and Bischoff always said that he felt like the wrestling product he wanted to present was always a good buffet of something for everybody. And I believe that's why he, did push forward with it, which I was very grateful that he did. And what I've learned over the years, and ironically decades, later, it's funny. I was just reminiscing with one of my buddies the other day about, here we come, January is not that far away. Will actually be 30 years, since I had that conversation with Eric. But it was, the thing I've learned over the years is I'm amazed, guys, how many people still to this day come up and will say to me, like you were such a big part of my childhood. And then what I realized was over the years is that the audience that I spoke to, even though there were a lot of adults I think who really dug it, and there were people who didn't get it. I totally get that. That's wrestling, and what I say to all young aspiring wrestlers, if you're going to get into this, you better have thick skin, because there's going to be people that love it, whatever you do, and the people that hate it. And the people that hate it, they have no problem being vocal about it. But it was to hear that and to know that, okay, it seems like a big part of the audience that really was really into to what I was bringing to the table, was that younger audience. And we had, during that time, everybody was watching wrestling, everybody, and so to know that I was a maybe larger than life figure and a positive figure to those kids that came up watching wrestling, that's something that's really, it makes me feel really good and makes me sleep well at night to know that I had that kind of positive impact on a lot of young viewers back then.
Oh man, so good, so good. Okay, another quick break and then a couple more stories with Glacier here on AEW Unrestricted.
AEW Unrestricted. It's Will Washington, it's Aubrey Edwards, but it's also our guest, Glacier, aka Ray Lloyd. Ray, I want to talk to you a little bit about the other side of things. We want to talk about training, and very specifically on the training and coaching side. You mentioned earlier that you were a teacher, and worked in the public school system. I want to talk a little bit about how those two things kind of relate in ways. How have you been able to kind of take what you were able to do with students in the public school system and apply that to professional wrestling, and then the other way around as well?
Yeah, well, I came out of college in '87. Ironically, football was my life, martial arts, and I played college football. Was very fortunate to go to college on a scholarship. Played at Valdosta State University, and was getting ready to graduate with my degree in education. And in April '87, I got brought into the wrestling business 2 months before I graduated college. And but then I started teaching and wrestling, every opportunity I could. But I ended up getting my degree in health and physical education. But then I got also a certification in special education because I grew up, which is something not a lot of people know. I grew up with a severe dyslexia as a kid. And and it really, really impacted me. And believe it or not, I actually was a very undersized kid when I was younger. My twin brother got all the size when we first out of the gate there before I hit puberty. But and so I was this skinny little kid, and I got passed through first grade because everybody passes first grade. But by the time I got to second grade, I was really lagging behind in reading, and just. I'm so thankful I had amazing parents, and my mom in particular. But my dad was smart enough just to support my mom and whatever. And my mom was a very strong-willed person, and she just when they tested me, and they actually came back with the which is really, it's so cruel to think about. This label actually existed not that long ago. I got labeled educable mentally retarded. If you can imagine that, what a horrible label, and right. But it basically meant that that I had which we known as learning disability later, but my mom was like, no, I'm not going to accept that. That's not, they basically said, the best you can hope for is we'll get him some special classes, and by the time he gets to high school, we suggest that you put him in a trade high school so we can learn a trade. And my mom was like you got my kid's life mapped out for him before you ever even start second grade. Like, no, I refuse to accept that. And so thankfully she got me some great tutors. My mom and dad did, and they really gave me the great support. And by the time I got to middle school, I was back on track and called up. And dyslexia is something you obviously never completely overcome, but you learn how to work around that or work with it by understanding it. And so by the time I was in high school, I was back in mainstream classes and everything. And so, when I got to college and I started studying health and education, which was physical education, which was also something I was really into. But I always had in the back of my mind, like, if I ever get a chance to teach, I'd really like to be able to help kids who probably, had some of the same fears that I had, because of my learning disability. So I got my certification in special ed, and I ended up teaching several years specifically as special ed. My first job ever actually was teaching special education in an elementary school. And I came in and I started about a week after the school year had started. And I walked in and there's these, these bright young little faces looking at me. I had no idea what I was supposed to do as a school teacher. And so I was like, all right, I got some good training in health and physical education. Hey guys, let's go outside and let's do some physical exercise and then I'll figure it out. But I learned, that a lot of good teaching is just good listening, is listening to what the students have to say. And by listening, they'll tell you a lot of what needs to how you approach, how you teach them. And one of the greatest lessons my dad ever taught me was he always said, Ray, and I learned this because I asked him this in college. He was a very good communicator as a state trooper. And, he was what they call post commander later in his career. He had moved way up in that. But he was really good at communicating with people. And I asked him, I said, Pop, like, why, how did you learn how to really do that? And he said, son, just because what I learned is just become genuinely interested in people. When they talk to you, listen to them, and he said, so when you're trying to make a point, then don't forget to listen to what the person's saying before you make your point or talk whatever you're going to say in the conversation. So that helped me a lot when I got into teaching. And one of the things I learned too was from a lot of my coaches and that were also teachers was to, a lot of the lessons you teach, if you can, somewhere weave in there some type of life lesson that they can take with them too, because no matter what they're looking to study, and this happened a lot with me when I became a coach for wrestling, is everybody gets into wrestling, and you guys know, you've met tons of people who when they think they get into wrestling, they think this is what they're going to do forever. And for most of them, realistically, it's going to be a chapter in their life, which is fine. They find something else maybe that makes them come alive, and then they eventually maybe leave wrestling, or they stay in it because they realize this is what they're going to do. But what I learned is by teaching some really, good, solid life lessons in the wrestling lesson or the school lesson, that's something that they could take with them wherever they go. And that's some of the stuff that was most valuable that I got taught. And just, also learning how to each individual learns differently, and because they learn differently, they're going to some will catch more and some will catch less. And one of my favorite mentors had a great saying is, not how much you taught, it's how much they caught, and so I'd always learned, okay, just because this person gets it, this person may not get it. And if they don't get it, it's not because they're not interested, it's just that they learn a little differently. And so I've got to approach that a little differently. So that's probably the best lesson I really learned that I've been able to transfer over into wrestling is everybody learns differently. And the way you get to learn how that person learns is by just listening to them, getting to know them. And because I think we get so caught up as coaches, mentors, teachers, and trying to teach the lesson that we don't listen to what's going to be the best way that they will understand the lesson, and sometimes the lesson is just letting them talk for a while and vent about something. So a lot of times when they come, when talent will come back from matches, they're like I was. A lot of them were kind of like puppy dogs, like, hey, tell me what you thought. I'm still that way, actually. But it's one of the things like, and I always learn to start with something positive. Always start with something positive, and then whatever, if there is some, constructive criticism, make it that constructive, not like, oh, that was horrible, whatever. But so yeah, there are a lot of lessons that I learned from outside the wrestling world that I've been able to transfer over, and then vice versa. So and that's and coming right from being back in public education, on board here, I was able to really be able to put a lot of that into practice just because it was so fresh in my mind, basically from just coming from those few years before.
It's crazy to listen to this because there's so many parallels to wrestling. Like you're talking about different people communicate differently, and sometimes you just need to let them talk. And sometimes it's like, how much are they getting out of it? I'm like, you're talking about teaching, and I'm like, you could just replace the word teaching with wrestling. And this is exactly what work is like.
Absolutely.
Like that's real. We have internally we have this big communication seminar coming up, and I'm like, we should just have you talk the whole time, because I think a lot of the communication issues that happen in just an office culture, I'm like, yeah, no, this would basically fix everything. This would be awesome.
Yeah. You know what? And honestly, it's funny that what I was thinking of when you said that was one of the things that I've learned that helped me. And once again, this was something that one of my mentors, actually a few of my mentors, but one of the things that really stuck with me, and I really try to do this, not because I'm trying to make a good impression on anybody, it's just because I want them to know that I'm sincere, I'm authentic, and when I give them any, because I really do care about them, is I really, and now it's become something I do almost second nature. I don't even think about it, but I try to, if there's anyone who I'm building relationships with, or someone I want to build a relationship more because I see really potential in them and I want to be able to help them, is I watch as much as I possibly can, and I find something that's a little thing that I can go back and remind them of, that, hey, I saw you doing this, and this was really cool. That was a great job, man. Really, that was awesome to see that. And like, for example, one of my second favorite moment from Saturday was, you guys know, I know Anna J very well. She's from my hometown. I know her parents, and right before they went out for the Gauntlet Battle Royal, which is a match that I was helping produce, is I walked up to it and I waited until right before. I think the first two women had gone out already. It started, and she was in there and she was getting all geared up, and I walked over to her and I just looked at her and I turned around and I said, "Hey," I said, "we're a long way from Brunswick, Georgia, aren't we?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, go out." And I gave her, I said, "Go have a good time. Go have a good time."
Yeah.
And I just wanted her to know, hey, look, I know where you came from. I know what it means to be here. Don't let all this pass without just remembering, man, this has been a great journey so far. And so just little things like that. Shane Taylor. Shane's someone who I've really gotten to know well. And I just happened to be back in the coaches area, and we have a big screen TV back there. And I've really gotten to know Shane, a lot of his personal journey, a lot of his personal goals and professional goals. And I just really enjoy talking to him. And and it means a lot to me that he comes and bounces ideas off of me. It means an awful lot to me. And so when they went out for their match, I was watching. I was just going to take a picture of just the crowd, and actually I was holding my phone up, and there happened to be a moment where it just popped up on the big screen, just said Taylor, and I just snapped that picture real quick. And then I took the picture and I just texted it to him with no message, and so when he got back, from his match and, he saw it, he just sent me a nice little message. And, I just wanted him to know, hey, not only am I here watching you, I'm here rooting for you, buddy. And I want you to enjoy this moment, so just things like that. I feel like, hopefully means something, because I had people in my life who saw the importance of moments like that. And I just, those are the things, hopefully, like I said, the life lessons that are those personal messages and moments that maybe will transcend, what we do in the ring.
God, I love that. Genuinely that makes me feel like you have this desire to make sure that you leave that kind of lasting impression on people. And that's whether that's in the ring or coaching or in teaching. And that leads me to my last question, which is the fact that, again, talking about me, who was 9 years old when, I first got to see the hype around Glacier and getting excited for that character to debut on TV, or some of the people you've gotten to coach over the years and trained over the years. What is it that you hope the final lasting legacy ends up being of who Ray Lloyd was to really any industry that you got to work in?
You know what? I mean, when I look at wrestling, this is something that I've said a few times when I've done interviews, where people would ask me, they'll say, do you have any final message you want to say to the fans or whatever? And so as far as wrestling, and I think this is just across the board, but I always, and one day I sat down, I thought about what would be my message to, say, the wrestling world, because of this world that I love so much, and I hope and pray I get a chance to be a part of it until I take my last breath. I mean that with all my heart. But my message was, when I really sat down and thought about it, was that I was so fortunate to learn from some of the other greats like Luthez. Luthez, of course, it was like the Babe Ruth of our industry. I got to know him the last 10 years of his life, and he really taught me a lot about. He always used to say, the first word in your title of professional wrestler is professional. Present yourself in a way to where, that people, that's what they remember, that you really, you presented well. You did everything like a professional. You walked like one, you talked like one, you dressed like one, you treated people like one, like just, that word is always stuck in my mind. So one of the things that I always go back to is that I hope that whenever anyone came to when they invest, always learn that our fans invest three things when they come to a live event. They invest their time, their money, and their attention. Hopefully we get all three of those, And my thing was, Lou used to always have a saying, like, your goal should be to give the people more than their money's worth, because if we just give them their money's worth, then maybe they do come back, maybe they don't. But if they really felt like, man, wow, I invested those three things, and boy, I had a great experience, and I want to go experience that again. And this is where I get that experience and that feeling, is coming to AEW. So my thing is, like, I always feel like, I hope that I have left, an impact and some memories that will, be there, and that maybe someone who watched me or watched us we made them feel something that they can share with their next generation, whether it's their children, their nieces, their nephews, or whoever, and their family. So that my goal is for that feeling to be around a lot longer than I am, because I know one of these days I'll be pushing up daisies. I know that, but the thing is, I hope there's some stories that people pass on that when I was growing up watching wrestling, and I watched this person, Glacier or whatever, and I got this great experience from it. They've got this feeling. Hopefully that's something they tell somebody, and then somebody tells the next generation, and just that the feeling. People will forget all the stuff that we do, but the one thing that I've learned they remember is how we made them feel. And I hope I made a lot of people feel really good about being wrestling fans. And just real quick, guys, and we can maybe follow up this a little bit later. But one of the ways that I hope will be a legacy that I leave is my producing partner and I, Luther Biggs, he and I met at the power plant back in '96. We just put out a feature film called The Unbreakable Bunch, which is our love letter to pro wrestling. I always say it's the Magnificent Seven meets John Carpenter's They Live. But it's out now, and you can get it on all the streaming services. You can check our website, theunbreakablebunchmovie.com. But it's a really family friendly movie, which is what we really strive to put out there. And but it's a story about a group of pro wrestlers that come together. They go on this last tour. They end up in this small town where there's this alien presence, and they end up standing with the town to take back the town. It's a really fun story, but it's at the end of the day, the whole theme of it is the beauty of camaraderie and friendship and loyalty. And that sounds kind of unusual thinking about a movie about wrestlers and aliens, but it's really
actually perfect.
Yeah, and that's what I hope my legacy is that something to where because Dallas told me a long time ago with his DDP yoga, he just said like the reason he does it is because he wants to be changing lives long after he's gone. That's why he records so much and puts it out there. And I feel like this film is certainly hopefully a part of my legacy that I can make people feel good about loving wrestling the way I love wrestling and being proud of that, and maybe getting some other people to sit down and watch wrestling and become fans as well, because it's the greatest business in the world. You guys know that. It really is.
I'm so happy that you talked about the movie, because I was going to ask as we close out, like, is there anything you want to plug? And I'm like, oh man, like, guy's such a professional. He already knows, like, he knows how it is. This is a great conversation, and it just shows how perfect it is, you and AEW being together, because capturing that feeling of just like wonderment and joy of what professional wrestling is to our fans is exactly what we're trying to do week in and week out. And I feel like whether it was, All In, whether it was Double or Nothing, whatever live event you were watching, whether it was live or TV, I feel like fans are getting this incredible experience, and you're a big part of that. And I'm so happy that you work here and you're a part of the AEW family.
Like I am too. I'm very proud. I'm very happy. I'm very excited. And I just, I come to work every day, and I just want to bring value to what we have. I love this brand. I love everybody involved from Tony on down. I mean that sincerely. I really do. I just, it's something that, once again, I didn't know if at this point in my life I'd be able to be involved in wrestling at the top level. And I wake up every day so thankful I get to go do this. And I just want to help any way I can. So,
you definitely are. Yeah. You definitely are.
Absolutely. And honestly, thank you to Glacier for being here. You can follow him on X at I am Glacier, and on Instagram at Glacier Ray Lloyd. And AEW Unrestricted is sponsored in part by Upper Deck. You can collect your favorite wrestlers in 2025 Upper Deck AEW and start your trading card collection today. Unwrap autograph, memorabilia, premium tech inserts. Visit upperdeck.com to learn more. You can listen to and follow this podcast, AEW Unrestricted, at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And check out the video episodes on our YouTube channel at AEW Unrestricted. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And make sure that you are an AEW insider and get early access to ticket pre-sales, special merchandise offers, and more straight to your inbox. Sign up today at AEWTIX.com. And don't forget, AEW Dynamite on TBS Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. and streaming on HBO Max, and AEW Collision live every Saturday on TNT and also streaming on HBO Max. ROH streams every Thursday on Honor Club. I'm Will Washington. She is Aubrey Edwards. Thank you for listening to AEW Unrestricted. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Peace.
Bye.